The Mafia boss thought his enemies were gone, until the black waitress warned, "They found you." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It was a quiet evening in the heart of New York City, a night that seemed as calm as any other. The streets outside were lined with neon lights, and the sound of car horns filled the air. Inside one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan, Mafia boss Vincent Romano sat at a table reserved for the city's elite. His sleek suit and sharp jawline commanded the attention of everyone around him, but his mind was far from the party. His enemies, he believed, were long gone, silenced by his own hand, or so he thought. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but Vincent's thoughts remained distant, tracing back to the violent history that had made him one of the most feared men in the city. He trusted that the past was behind him, that the threat of his enemies was finally over. Little did he know that the very thing he feared most was lurking in the shadows, watching his every move. In the corner of the room, behind the bar, stood a woman who had no business being here. Her name was Mia, a black waitress, just trying to make a living in a world that had never been kind to her. She had seen things she shouldn't have seen. As the evening progressed, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in her gut. The whispers, the small glances, and the way some of the guests looked at her, it all felt wrong. And then, it happened. As Mia passed Vincent's table, she caught a glimpse of something familiar, something that made her heart stop. A man, seated in the shadows, watching Vincent with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. His face was one she had seen before in old photographs, the kind that are never meant to be seen again. The man was an old rival, a ghost from Vincent's past, someone believed to be dead. Mia's instincts screamed at her. The danger wasn't over. It was back, and it was closer than ever. She knew she couldn't ignore it, not when so much was at stake. Mia did something she never thought she'd do. She walked up to Vincent's table. Her heart pounded in her chest as she leaned down to whisper in his ear. "They found you." Vincent froze, the glass of wine in his hand trembling slightly. He looked at Mia, his sharp eyes narrowing as he tried to make sense of her words. For a brief moment, the world around him seemed to slow down. Mia continued, her voice steady but urgent. "They're still out there. They never left." Vincent's mind raced. He had buried his enemies, or so he thought. He had crushed them under the weight of his power. But here was this woman, a waitress, telling him that his past had come back to haunt him. His empire, built on fear and respect, was now at risk. Vincent's gaze turned cold, and the air in the room shifted. The tension was palpable. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low, laced with suspicion. Mia stood tall, unflinching under his gaze. "I know things," she said. "I saw them. I know who's coming." As the words hung in the air, Vincent could feel the weight of the situation sinking in. His enemies weren't gone. They had just been waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, that moment had arrived. The room seemed to hold its breath as Vincent Romano processed Mia's words. For a moment, time stood still, and the only sound was the clinking of glasses and low murmurs of the other guests. The man sitting across from him, the one Mia had pointed out, looked like an ordinary diner, but Vincent knew better. His gut twisted with the unsettling truth. His past had caught up with him. The ghost of his enemies had returned. He had thought he was safe, that he had silenced every threat to his empire, but now, it seemed, he was wrong. His empire wasn't as secure as he had believed. Vincent slowly set his glass down, his gaze never leaving Mia's eyes. She wasn't just any waitress. She knew something that Vincent needed to understand. "What do you know?" he asked, his voice tight, betraying none of the panic he felt beneath his calm exterior. Mia hesitated for a moment, then leaned in closer, her eyes darting nervously to the man in the corner. "I saw him." "The man in the corner," she said, her voice low. "He's not supposed to be here. He's part of the Volkov family. I know him from my past. He's dangerous." Vincent's mind raced. The Volkov family. They were a threat he had eliminated years ago. Or so he thought. He leaned forward, the weight of the situation sinking in. He had built his empire by keeping enemies at bay, but this This was different. Mia was no ordinary employee. She knew too much. You're telling me that man is from the Volkov family? You're sure? Vincent's voice dropped lower, dangerous now. Mia nodded, her eyes filled with urgency. I'm sure. He's been tracking you for years. I thought he was dead. But he's not. He's here, watching you. And he's not alone. He's not just a ghost from your past. He's a warning. Vincent straightened, the weight of her words sinking into him. He had underestimated the reach of his enemies. It was a mistake he couldn't afford to make. What do you want, Mia? He asked. His eyes searched hers, trying to gauge whether she was telling the truth. You don't have to get involved in this. You're just a waitress. Stay out of it. Mia shook her head. I can't, she said. I've seen too much. And I know how dangerous he is. He's not just a small-time thug. He's got connections, and they'll come for you, Vincent. They'll come for everything you've built. Vincent's gaze hardened. The danger was real, and it was right in front of him. He had to act, but how? This wasn't a situation he could control the way he usually did. Do you have any idea who else is involved? Vincent asked. Mia hesitated, then nodded. There's more. I've seen them working with the Giordano family. They've been planning something big. And they know about you. They've been waiting for the right moment to strike. Vincent felt a cold rush of fear shoot through him. The Giordano family was a rival he had long feared, and now, they were in the mix. They were after him, after his empire. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just fighting the Volkov family anymore. He was up against an entire network of enemies. Enemies who knew him too well. This is bigger than I thought, he muttered. His eyes flicked back to the man in the corner, who had been watching them both the entire time. Vincent stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He wasn't going to sit back and wait for them to come for him. No, he was going to take the fight to them. He turned to Mia. Get out of here. Go somewhere safe. I'll handle this. Mia's eyes widened with disbelief. No, Vincent. Don't do this alone. You need someone on the inside. I can help. Vincent's jaw clenched. He didn't want to drag Mia deeper into this. She was just a waitress, a witness to something she shouldn't have seen. But her words struck a chord with him. Maybe he needed her. Maybe she could be the key to stopping this before it was too late. Fine, he said, his voice cold. You want to help? Then you stick with me. But the moment it gets too dangerous, you get out. Understood. Mia nodded, her expression hardening with determination. Understood. As the two of them stood in the middle of the bustling restaurant, their lives were about to change forever. The Volkov family and the Giordano family weren't just threats anymore. They were a ticking time bomb, and Vincent was the target. With Mia by his side, he would fight back. But the question was, would it be enough to protect everything he had built? Or would his enemies finally destroy him? Vincent's mind raced as he stood in the middle of the restaurant, his pulse quickening with the realization that everything he had worked for was now at risk. He was a man of power, a man who had spent years building an empire, and yet, in this moment, he felt completely vulnerable. Mia, the black waitress who had just warned him, stood by his side, her face tense with concern. He could see the uncertainty in her eyes, but he knew one thing for sure. She was right. His enemies were not gone. They were closer than ever. He turned to Mia, his voice low but firm. We need to move quickly. We can't let them know we're onto them. Mia nodded, her grip tightening on the apron she still wore. What's the plan? Vincent's gaze flicked to the man in the corner, still sitting quietly, watching them both. The Volkov family had always been ruthless, and if what Mia said was true, this was no small threat. The Giordano family's involvement only complicated things further. I'll take care of the Volkovs. But I need you to do something for me, Vincent said, his tone growing serious. We need to find out who else is involved. The Giordano family doesn't operate in the open. If they're planning something, we need to know what. Mia swallowed hard, but her voice was steady. I'll do whatever it takes. But you need to promise me something. Vincent raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. What? Promise me that you'll let me help. This isn't just your fight anymore. We're in this together. Vincent studied her for a long moment, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had always been a solitary man, dealing with his enemies alone. But Mia was different. She wasn't like the others. She had seen too much, and now, there was no turning back. Fine, he said finally. But you need to stay close. No distractions. This is going to get dangerous. As they left the restaurant, the cool night air hit Vincent's face like a slap. The city around him seemed alive, buzzing with energy, but to him, It felt like everything was about to implode. He had spent years building his reputation, crushing anyone who dared to cross him. But now, the enemy was hiding in plain sight, and he had to find a way to outsmart them. Where do we start? Mia asked, her eyes scanning the street for any signs of danger. Vincent motioned to the sleek black car parked nearby. We start by making sure we're not followed. They got into the car, and Vincent slammed the door shut. Take me to the safe house. It's time to make some calls. As the car sped through the streets, Vincent's mind raced. The Volkov family wasn't just a small-time player in the criminal underworld. They were connected, dangerous, and willing to do anything to take him down. And the Giordano family? They were even more unpredictable. He couldn't afford to underestimate them. Vincent's phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. It was a message from his right-hand man, Luca. We've got a situation. Someone's trying to hack into your accounts. We think it's the Volkovs. They're targeting your assets. Vincent cursed under his breath. He had been expecting something like this, but hearing it confirmed made it feel real. Find out who's behind it, and shut them down, he ordered, his voice cold. And give me a list of anyone who's had access to the accounts in the last 24 hours. He hung up and turned to Mia, his face hardening with resolve. They're trying to hit me where it hurts, my finances. I need to make sure they don't get any further. Mia's eyes narrowed. What's the next move? Vincent leaned back in his seat, his mind already working out a plan. We need to hit them before they hit us. The Volkovs are going to make their move soon, and I intend to be ready. But first, I need information. I need to know who's been working with them, and I need you to get close to their operations. We'll use your position to our advantage. Mia nodded, determination in her eyes. I'll do it. I'll find out everything we need to know. Vincent watched her, knowing that the next few days would determine everything. The battle wasn't just about power, it was about survival. He would have to be smarter, quicker, and more ruthless than ever before. As the car sped toward the safe house, Vincent's thoughts turned to the man he had seen earlier, the one who had been watching him in the restaurant. He wasn't just a messenger. He was a warning, and Vincent was determined to make sure that warning was never acted upon. The war was just beginning, and Vincent was ready for whatever came next. As the car rolled into the darkened alley leading to Vincent's safe house, a sense of urgency settled over the vehicle. The walls of the house loomed ahead, an impenetrable fortress designed to keep out even the most determined enemies. Inside, the tension in Vincent's chest had only grown. Mia sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Her earlier confidence had been replaced by a quiet determination, but Vincent knew her resolve would be tested in ways neither of them could yet predict. They had just entered the heart of a war that could destroy everything they had worked for. As the car stopped, Vincent stepped out first, his boots clicking against the concrete as he moved quickly toward the door. He was used to acting alone, but now, with Mia by his side, everything was different. He couldn't help but wonder how far she was willing to go. Stay close, he muttered, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. And remember, this isn't just about us anymore. The Volkovs and the Giordano family, they won't stop until they have everything. And we can't afford to be weak. Mia nodded, her expression hardening. I understand. As they entered the safe house, Vincent walked to the back room, where his trusted ally Luca was waiting. Luca was a tall man, broad-shouldered and built like a tank. His presence was comforting, but even he couldn't mask the tension in the air. Vincent, Luca greeted, his tone serious. I've been monitoring the accounts. The Volkovs have made their move. We've tracked a few of their transactions, and it's clear they're targeting your offshore assets. And there's a connection to the Giordano family. Vincent's jaw clenched. This was worse than he thought. How bad is it? He asked, already knowing the answer. Luca didn't hesitate. It's bad. They've been moving money in and out of shell accounts. We can't trace it yet, but it's all connected. The Volkovs are using the Giordano family to cover their tracks. Vincent's mind churned with the implications. If the Volkovs were working with the Giordano family, then this was more than just a power grab. It was a full-scale assault on everything he had built. We need to hit them before they get any further, Vincent said, his voice low but resolute. He turned to Mia, who had been silently observing the exchange. I need you to do something for me. We're going to need someone on the inside. I want you to infiltrate their operations. Get close to whoever is running the show. Mia's eyes narrowed. You want me to go undercover? Vincent met her gaze, his expression hardening. You're the only one who can. I trust you. You've already proven you're more than just a waitress. I need you to be our eyes and ears. Mia hesitated, but only for a moment. She had already been thrust into this world, and there was no turning back now. All right, she said finally, her voice steady. I'll do it. But you need to promise me something. Vincent raised an eyebrow. What? Promise me you'll be careful. This isn't just a game, Vincent. You're going up against two of the most powerful families in New York. Vincent didn't flinch. I know what I'm up against. But we don't have a choice. We take the fight to them, or they'll take everything from us. With that, they set to work. Vincent and Luca gathered all the intel they had on the Volkovs and the Giordano family. Vincent's fingers danced over his phone screen, texting trusted contacts, pulling strings, trying to piece together the puzzle that had been set in motion. Mia, meanwhile, took a deep breath and prepared herself for what was to come. She knew the risks, knew the dangers of getting too close to people who could destroy her in an instant. But she had a job to do. She had to play her part in this high-stakes game. The next few hours felt like a blur as Vincent's empire began to fight back. They set up meetings, made calls, and formulated a plan to take down the Volkovs and the Giordano family once and for all. The world of power and corruption wasn't one Vincent had ever feared. It was one he had always controlled. But now, everything felt different. As Vincent glanced over at Mia, who was preparing for her mission, he realized something. He wasn't just fighting for his empire anymore. He was fighting for his survival, and for hers as well. Mia's mission was a dangerous one, and if she was caught, there would be no coming back. But Vincent wasn't about to let that happen. He had already lost too much. And this time, he wasn't going to lose again. Vincent sat at the heavy oak table, his fingers tapping impatiently against the surface. His mind raced with a million thoughts, each one more urgent than the last. Mia was out there, deep in enemy territory, and he knew the risks. He had seen the game played, but this time, the stakes were higher. This wasn't just about control or power, it was about survival. And right now, he wasn't sure who would come out on top. The Volkovs were getting bolder. Their moves were subtle, but Vincent knew better than to ignore them. The Giordano family, working in the shadows, had only added to the pressure. And Mia, she was now in the lion's den, armed with nothing but her wits. He couldn't afford any more mistakes. His phone buzzed on the table, cutting through the tension in the room. It was a message from Luca. We've tracked the Volkovs. They've made their next move. They're sending a shipment, guns, drugs, you name it. The Giordano family is involved. They're working out of an old warehouse downtown. We've got a window. Vincent's jaw tightened. A warehouse. It could be a trap, or it could be the break he needed. Set it up, he replied, his voice low. I want everything in place before they move. He stood up, walking to the window of the safe house, his thoughts still on Mia. She had proven herself, but this was different. This wasn't a simple operation. They were dealing with organized crime on a scale he hadn't seen in years. Mia had agreed to infiltrate the enemy, but Vincent couldn't help but worry. If she was caught, if they figured out who she was, it would all be over. He clenched his fists, the weight of the situation crushing him. He couldn't let her down. She had done more for him than anyone else. And now, they were in this together, whether she liked it or not. He heard the sound of footsteps approaching and turned to see Luca enter the room. It's done, Luca said, his voice calm but urgent. We've got a team ready to move on the warehouse. But we need to act fast. Once the Volkovs know we're onto them, they'll move everything. Vincent nodded. I'll be there. You're in charge, Luca. Make sure we get in and out clean. No mistakes. Luca didn't hesitate. Understood. Vincent grabbed his coat and made his way out the door. He wasn't afraid of the Volkovs, not anymore. He had spent years building his empire on the backs of men like them. But this was personal. Mia was more than just a tool in his war. She was a partner, and he wasn't going to lose her. The drive to the warehouse was silent, the tension thick in the air. Vincent's mind raced with plans and contingencies, but his thoughts always came back to Mia. Was she safe? Had she been discovered? Was she still in control? He couldn't answer any of these questions, but he knew one thing. He had to be ready for whatever happened next. The warehouse loomed ahead, an industrial building with rusted doors and broken windows. It had been abandoned for years, but now it was being used to move illegal goods. Vincent's team, a group of hardened men who had followed him through hell and back, were already positioned around the perimeter. They moved like shadows, blending into the night. Vincent took a deep breath, adjusting his grip on his gun. "Let's go," he said, his voice steady. The team moved quickly, entering the warehouse through a back entrance, using the cover of darkness to stay hidden. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of crates and barrels, the air thick with the smell of mildew and oil. Vincent's heart pounded in his chest as they moved further into the building. They had to find the Volkovs, and they had to do it fast. His eyes scanned the shadows, every noise amplifying in the silence. Then, he saw them. 2 men, heavily armed, standing near a pile of crates. Vincent's team moved in silently, but just as they were about to strike, a loud noise echoed through the warehouse. Vincent's heart stopped. It was the sound of a gunshot. He whipped around, scanning the area for Mia. He had trusted her to stay out of the way, but now he wasn't sure. Had she been compromised? Was she in danger? His thoughts raced as he moved toward the source of the sound. "Mia," he called, his voice urgent. He couldn't afford to lose her. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. As he turned the corner, he saw her. She was standing, facing a group of Volkov men, her back pressed against the wall. They had her cornered. But what shocked Vincent the most was the look in her eyes. She wasn't afraid. She was calm, calculating. She had become the very thing he needed her to be. "Vincent," she said, her voice steady as she raised her hands in surrender. "I've got this." The Volkov men hesitated, unsure of what to make of her. Vincent didn't wait. He raised his weapon and fired, taking down the first man before he could react. The rest of the team moved in, securing the area. Mia stepped forward, a look of determination on her face. "I told you I could handle this." Vincent walked over to her, his heart still racing. "You're sure you're all right?" Mia nodded, her gaze never leaving the fallen men. "I've got this under control." Vincent couldn't help but smile, a small spark of pride flickering in his chest. They had done it. The Volkovs were down, and the Giordano family was no longer a threat. But Vincent knew this was just the beginning. He had won this battle, but the war was far from over. As he looked at Mia, he realized something. She had earned his trust in ways no one else ever could. She had proven herself time and time again. And now, they were in this together, for better or worse. Vincent leaned against the wall of the warehouse, his chest still heaving from the adrenaline of the last few minutes. Mia stood beside him, her gaze scanning the area for any more threats. But there was a certain calm to her now. She had proven herself in ways Vincent hadn't expected, handling the situation with a level of composure that few could match. It was clear to him now, Mia wasn't just another pawn in his game. She was someone who could hold her own. And as the dust settled, the gravity of what they had just done began to sink in. The Volkovs were down. The Giordano family was no longer a threat. But Vincent knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. "You did good," Vincent said, his voice low, but laced with respect. Mia turned to him, her expression unreadable for a moment. "You're not too bad yourself," she replied, the faintest hint of a smile on her lips. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken understanding. They both knew the stakes, the risks they were taking by doing this, but neither of them had any intention of backing down. Vincent glanced at his phone, seeing several missed calls from his associates. They had made their move, but it seemed like the world was already reacting to their actions. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone would be watching to see what Vincent did next. "We need to move fast," he said, pushing himself off the wall. "The Volkovs might be down, but we don't know who else is involved. This could still turn into a bigger mess than we want." Mia nodded, stepping closer to him. "What's the plan?" Vincent didn't hesitate. "We get out of here. Head back to the safe house. I'll call Luca, and we'll figure out what's next. But we can't afford to stay on the defensive. We need to be ahead of this." The weight of the situation hung over them, but as they made their way toward the exit, Vincent couldn't help but feel a surge of something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't alone in this fight. And Mia was proving to be an ally he could trust. As they got into the car, Vincent glanced at Mia, who was staring out the window, her face illuminated by the dim light from the street lamps. He could tell she was thinking, processing the events, just like him. "You're not going to back out now, are you?" Vincent asked, his voice light, but laced with genuine curiosity. Mia turned to him, her eyes meeting his. Not a chance, she said firmly. Vincent nodded, appreciating the resolve in her voice. Good. We've got a long way to go. The drive back to the safe house was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Vincent's mind raced with plans and contingencies, but the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. He couldn't do this alone anymore. Mia had earned her place in this world. She was more than just a witness. She was a force in her own right. As they arrived at the safe house, Luca was waiting outside, his expression grim. We've got a problem, Luca said, his voice tight. There's been a breach. Someone knows we're onto them. Vincent's gut tightened. How bad is it? Luca hesitated before responding. They've started moving assets. It's not just money anymore. They're targeting your people, the ones you trust. Vincent's eyes darkened. His empire was built on loyalty. The thought of someone turning on him was more than he could handle. Who? He asked, his voice hard. Luca shook his head. I don't know yet. But we need to move quickly. Whoever it is, they're trying to take us down from the inside. Mia stepped forward, her voice steady. We need to find out who's behind this before they strike again. Vincent turned to her, his mind already racing with ideas. He couldn't let this go on any longer. If someone inside his circle was betraying him, he needed to stop it before it spread. You're right, he said. We'll start with the people closest to us. If we find the leak, we take care of it, fast. He turned back to Luca. Get the team together. We're going after them. Luca nodded and disappeared into the safe house. Vincent turned to Mia, his gaze steady. This is going to get messy, he said. Mia didn't flinch. I'm ready. They stood there for a moment, the weight of the coming storm heavy between them. Vincent knew this was the tipping point. He had to act now. He couldn't afford to waste any more time. The enemies that had been lurking in the shadows were about to make their move, and Vincent was going to make sure they paid for underestimating him. As they prepared for the next phase of their mission, Vincent felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time, he wasn't going to back down. No matter what came next, he and Mia were in this together. They would fight for their survival, and they would win. The safe house was silent except for the occasional rustling of papers and the soft clicking of keyboards. Vincent paced back and forth, his mind working at full speed as he processed the latest intel. The leak inside his organization had been identified, but the question remained. Who could he trust now? He had spent years building this empire, relying on the loyalty of those around him. But now it seemed everything he'd worked for was crumbling. He had made a promise to Mia, and he wasn't about to let her down. He stopped in front of the table where Luca was sitting, his eyes fixed on the computer screen. You sure about this? Vincent asked, his voice low. Luca looked up, his expression grim. It's them. I've traced the signals. Someone close to you has been feeding information to the Volkovs. Vincent's fists clenched. The betrayal stung more than he cared to admit. His own people had turned against him, and now the Volkovs were closing in. He couldn't let them take control. Who's the traitor? Vincent demanded. Luca paused, pulling up a list of names on the screen. It's Marco, your head of security. He's been working with them for months, feeding them everything. Vincent's heart sank. Marco had been with him from the beginning, someone he had trusted with his life. To find out that Marco was working with his enemies was a bitter pill to swallow. Get him out, Vincent ordered, his voice cold and final. Now. Luca nodded, and without another word, he stood up, signaling to his men. Vincent turned to Mia, who had been watching from the corner of the room, her expression unreadable. You still in this? He asked, his tone steady but filled with urgency. Mia didn't hesitate. I'm not going anywhere. Vincent nodded, his jaw tight. He had never doubted her, but hearing her say it out loud brought a sense of relief he hadn't expected. Together, they had been through hell. And now, it was time to finish what they had started. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Marco was swiftly removed from the equation, and Vincent's team worked to secure their position. But even as he focused on the immediate threat, his mind couldn't shake the thought of the bigger picture. The Volkovs weren't just trying to destroy him. They were trying to destroy everything he had built. They wanted to take over the city, to strip him of his power. And Vincent wasn't about to let that happen. As night fell, Vincent gathered his remaining loyal men. They sat around the table, their faces grim, each one knowing the gravity of the situation. This is it, Vincent said, his voice calm but filled with an undeniable intensity. We take the fight to them. We don't wait for them to make the first move. We go in, and we end this tonight. Mia stood next to him, her gaze focused and unwavering. "Where do we start?" she asked. Vincent looked at the map spread out before them, his finger tracing the locations of the Volkovs' known hideouts. "We hit their warehouses first. That's where they're stockpiling the weapons and money. We take them down, and we hit them hard." His eyes met Mia's, and for the first time since this whole ordeal started, he saw the fire in her eyes. She was ready. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steady. Vincent stood up, the weight of the decision on his shoulders, but there was no turning back now. He knew the risks, but he also knew that in this world, you either fought or you lost. And Vincent Romano never lost. They moved quickly, setting up their plan with military precision. Vincent's men were ready, and Mia had infiltrated their network, gathering the intel they needed. As they approached the Volkov warehouse, Vincent's heart pounded in his chest. He had been here before, in similar situations, but this time it felt different. This time, it was personal. He wasn't just fighting for power, he was fighting for survival. The warehouse loomed ahead, its darkened windows giving nothing away. The air was thick with tension as Vincent's men moved into position, weapons drawn. Mia was by his side, her face set with determination. They had come too far to turn back now. "On my signal," Vincent whispered to his men, his hand resting on the door handle. They nodded, their eyes focused on him. "Now," Vincent said, pushing the door open. The warehouse was eerily quiet, the silence only broken by the faint hum of machinery in the distance. Vincent motioned for his men to move, his footsteps echoing through the cavernous space. They had to be swift. They had to be ruthless. The Volkovs wouldn't get away this time. As they made their way deeper into the warehouse, Vincent's thoughts were focused solely on the mission at hand. But then, something changed. The silence was broken by the sound of footsteps approaching. Vincent's instincts kicked in. He held up his hand, signaling his men to stop. The footsteps grew louder, and soon, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was one of the Volkovs, a man Vincent recognized. "You shouldn't have come here, Vincent," the man said, his voice cold. "This is our city now." Vincent stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "You've made a mistake," he said, his voice steady. "This city belongs to me." With that, the fight began. The sound of gunfire filled the air as Vincent's men and the Volkovs clashed in the dim light. Vincent moved with precision, his years of experience guiding his every move. Mia was at his side, holding her ground as they fought together. The battle raged on, each side determined to come out on top. But in the end, there could only be one victor. And Vincent Romano was determined that it would be him. The battle inside the warehouse raged on, the sound of gunfire and shouting filling the air. Vincent's mind was laser-focused as he moved through the chaos, directing his men with precision. His years of experience in the underworld had taught him how to think on his feet, how to anticipate every move of his enemies. But even with all his preparation, he felt a gnawing sense of urgency. The Volkovs were not just any enemies. They were personal. Mia was beside him, her steady presence a reminder of what they were fighting for. Together, they moved like a well-oiled machine, taking down anyone who posed a threat. Vincent's eyes never left the man who had spoken to him earlier, the one who had claimed that this city belonged to them. The Volkovs were about to learn just how wrong they were. Vincent's men were pushing forward, clearing the space, but the Volkov resistance was fierce. Every corner they turned seemed to bring another obstacle, another enemy ready to fight for their survival. Vincent ducked behind a stack of crates, his gun raised, scanning the area. He had to end this. Now, as he peered around the crates, he saw the Volkov leader, the man who had been calling the shots, moving into position across the warehouse. His eyes locked with Vincent's, and for a moment, the two men just stared at each other. The tension in the air was thick, almost palpable. Then, without a word, the Volkov leader raised his weapon. Vincent moved first. He fired quickly, the sound of the gunshot echoing through the space. The leader dropped to the ground, but Vincent knew this wasn't the end. There was always someone else ready to take control. Vincent turned to Mia, who had just taken down another enemy, her face set with determination. He nodded at her, signaling for her to follow him as they moved deeper into the warehouse. They couldn't afford to waste any time. The Volkovs weren't going to stop until they had what they came for, and Vincent wasn't about to let them win. As they advanced, Vincent's mind kept returning to the words of the Volkov leader. This is our city now. Those words haunted him. He had spent too many years fighting for control, for power. He wasn't about to let it slip through his fingers now. They moved quickly, clearing out the remaining Volkov forces. It wasn't long before the warehouse began to fall silent, the only sounds left being the heavy breathing of Vincent's men and the distant wail of sirens outside. Vincent stood in the middle of the warehouse, his heart pounding in his chest. They had done it. They had taken the warehouse. But even as he let out a breath of relief, he knew that the war was far from over. He turned to Mia, who was wiping the sweat from her forehead, her eyes scanning the area, always alert. "You good?" he asked, his voice low. Mia nodded, her face grim. "Yeah, but this isn't over. There's more to this than just the Volkovs. They've got connections. And the Giordano family, they're still out there." Vincent didn't answer right away. Mia was right. The Volkovs were just one part of the puzzle. The real danger was still out there, lurking in the shadows. And Vincent knew that as long as they were alive, they would come after him, come after his empire. He had no choice but to keep fighting. "We need to regroup," he said finally, his voice steady. "I want everyone on high alert. We can't let our guard down." As they made their way out of the warehouse, Vincent's mind shifted to the next step. He couldn't afford to wait for his enemies to come for him. He needed to go on the offensive. It was time to put an end to this once and for all. They reached the car, and Vincent climbed in, his eyes already scanning the street ahead. He turned to Mia, who was sitting quietly next to him. "Get in touch with our contacts," he said. "I need every bit of intel we can get on the Volkovs, the Giordano family, and anyone else who might be involved. We need to hit them before they can organize." Mia nodded, already pulling out her phone. She was focused, professional. Vincent trusted her more than anyone else. Together, they had made it this far. But there was still so much left to do. Vincent's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. "Luca." He answered immediately. "We're clear," Luca said, his voice steady. "We've secured the warehouse. But there's something you need to know. We've been getting some strange signals. The Volkovs weren't working alone. We think someone on the inside has been feeding them information." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Who?" Luca didn't answer right away. "We don't know yet. But we're tracking down every lead." Vincent leaned back in the seat, his mind racing. "Get it figured out. I want answers, and I want them now. We can't afford any more surprises." As the car sped down the dark streets, Vincent's thoughts turned to the future. He had always prided himself on being able to control his world. But now, he realized, the world he had built was no longer his to control alone. It was a dangerous game they were playing, and the stakes were higher than ever. Mia turned to him, her face serious. "What's the next move?" she asked. Vincent looked out the window, his eyes hardening. "We go after the Giordano family. This ends tonight." The night was still and heavy as Vincent's car sped through the streets, cutting through the dark like a predator on the hunt. Mia sat beside him, her expression unreadable, but Vincent could feel the tension between them. They were heading straight for the Giordano family stronghold. This was the move that would either break them or solidify their dominance over the city. Vincent's mind raced, calculating every possible outcome. The Volkovs were down, but they were just the tip of the iceberg. The real power, the Giordano family, was still very much alive and ready to strike back. The weight of it all pressed down on him, but he couldn't afford to show any sign of weakness. "Not now. We've been over the intel," Vincent said, breaking the silence. "This is where they operate from. The warehouse at the docks." Mia nodded, her eyes focused ahead. "They'll be expecting us. They always are. Then we have to make sure they don't see us coming," Vincent replied, his voice firm. "I want you to stay back and cover us from a distance. Keep an eye out. We don't know who else they've got working for them." Mia looked at him for a long moment, a flicker of something in her eyes. She didn't need to be told twice. She had already proven herself in ways that Vincent hadn't expected. He trusted her with his life now, and he wasn't going to let that go to waste. "Got it," she said simply, her gaze returning to the road ahead. As they pulled up to the dockyard, the tension grew thicker. The docks were abandoned, dark and eerily quiet, save for the distant sound of waves crashing against the concrete. This was the perfect spot for a showdown, and Vincent knew they had to make it count. He stepped out of the car, his gun holstered at his side, but his fingers twitching in anticipation. His team moved quickly behind him, positioning themselves around the perimeter. The element of surprise was their only advantage. Vincent motioned to Mia, signaling her to stay put. "Don't engage unless I give the word," he said quietly. Mia nodded and disappeared into the shadows, ready to do her part. Vincent's heart pounded as he moved forward with his men, each step feeling heavier than the last. He had been in countless situations like this before, but this felt different. The air was thick with the promise of danger. He could feel it in his bones. "Stay sharp," he murmured to his team as they approached the warehouse entrance. The door was slightly ajar, a perfect entry point. Vincent pushed it open slowly, signaling for his men to follow. The warehouse was dimly lit, the only source of light coming from a single overhead bulb. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the empty space as they moved in, their eyes scanning every corner for danger. "This is it," Vincent whispered, his voice low and controlled. "Take them down. Fast and clean." They moved quickly, clearing the first room. No sign of the Giordano family. But Vincent knew they were close. He could feel the presence of his enemies, lurking just out of sight. Then, the sound of a door creaking open caught his attention. A group of men emerged from the shadows, their guns raised, ready for a fight. Vincent didn't hesitate. He fired first, taking down the closest man with a single shot. His team followed suit, moving with precision, taking down the remaining enemies one by one. But as the last man fell, Vincent realized something. There was something off. It was too quiet. Too easy. "It's a trap," he muttered, his heart sinking. Before he could react, the overhead lights flickered and then went out, plunging them into darkness. A loud crash echoed from the far side of the warehouse, followed by the sound of men shouting orders. Vincent's mind raced. He knew they had walked into a trap, but now they were surrounded. "Fall back," Vincent barked, his voice sharp with urgency. "Regroup. Get to the exit." But as they tried to move, the sound of footsteps from every direction closed in. The Giordano family wasn't just going to let them walk away. They were going to make sure Vincent paid for everything. "Vincent," Mia's voice crackled over the radio, "they've got snipers. Watch out." Vincent's heart skipped a beat. Snipers. He knew they had to move quickly. He signaled for his men to split up, heading toward different exits. "Cover each other," Vincent commanded, his voice low and steady. "We can't let them trap us in here." He moved toward the back of the warehouse, his mind calculating their next move. He could hear the distant sound of gunfire, but he had no time to worry about that. He had to focus on getting them out. As he neared the exit, a bullet whizzed past his head, barely missing him. He ducked behind a stack of crates, cursing under his breath. The Giordano family was relentless. They weren't just after power, they were after revenge. And Vincent knew that no matter how many battles he won, they would never stop coming for him. Mia's voice came through the radio again, a little more frantic this time. "Vincent, we need to get out of here. Now." Vincent's eyes narrowed as he glanced around. The snipers were still in place, but he had a plan. "Move to the left side. I'll create a distraction. When I give the signal, make a run for it." He heard Mia's voice in his earpiece, clear and determined. "Understood." Vincent took a deep breath. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. He had fought his way to the top, but now he was fighting for survival. This city had always been his, and he would be damned if he let anyone take it from him. "Let's go," he whispered to himself as he made his move. It was time to finish this. The sound of gunfire echoed through the dark warehouse, a stark reminder that the battle wasn't over yet. Vincent ducked behind a stack of crates, his heart pounding as he heard the thudding of footsteps from all directions. His mind raced, calculating their next move, but the pressure was mounting. Mia's voice crackled in his earpiece, her tone urgent. "Vincent, the exit is covered. They're not going to let us walk out of here." Vincent could feel the weight of her words settle in his chest. The Giordano family had outplayed him once, and he wasn't about to let them do it again. He motioned for his men to split, the plan now in motion. They would not be trapped like this. They would fight their way out. As Vincent moved, a bullet tore through the air, grazing his arm. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. The pain was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the battle they were facing. He couldn't afford to lose his composure now. "Stay down," Vincent barked to his team, pulling his weapon from his holster. He was already moving, his instincts taking over as he returned fire. Each shot he fired was calculated, controlled. He could feel the enemy getting closer, the snipers still positioned high up in the rafters, waiting for the perfect shot. Mia was right. They couldn't just wait for an opening. They needed to create one. Luca, cover the right flank. Vincent shouted over the gunfire. I'll make a run for the back door. Luca didn't hesitate. Got it, boss. Vincent turned to Mia, his gaze intense. When I give the signal, you move. Don't wait for me. Get out. Mia nodded, her face hardening with determination. I'm not going anywhere until we're both out of here. Vincent gave her a brief nod, his mind already shifting to the next phase of the plan. He could feel his pulse in his ears, the anticipation and the urgency weighing on him. The Giordano family was determined, but so was he. They wouldn't take this from him. Not without a fight. With a quick signal, Vincent moved, darting from cover to cover, his eyes constantly scanning for danger. He knew they were close now. The back exit was just ahead, but the path was lined with enemies, all of them prepared to take him down. He would need to act fast, or everything would fall apart. A bullet shattered a nearby crate, sending splinters flying, and Vincent didn't even flinch. He kept moving, firing back as he went. His men were covering him. But the more he moved forward, the clearer it became that the Giordano family wasn't just going to stand by and let them escape. They had a plan, too. Vincent, Mia's voice came through again. Louder this time. They've got reinforcements. We need to get out now. He didn't need to hear any more. He was already halfway to the door. Cover me. Vincent shouted to Luca and the others. I'm going through. The moment he hit the door, the first wave of Giordano soldiers appeared, blocking the path. Vincent's heart slammed against his ribcage as he fired, taking down the first man in his sight. But the seconds stretched on like an eternity. More men poured in, and Vincent had no time to second-guess his decision. The warehouse was no longer a safe place for them. He turned to Mia, who had already positioned herself by the exit, ready to move. But there was something different in her eyes now. Something determined. Go, he said urgently. Now. She hesitated for a split second, then bolted for the exit, taking cover as she ran. Vincent's mind buzzed as he covered her retreat, picking off any enemy soldiers who got too close. Mia, Vincent shouted again, his voice cutting through the chaos. Go. Mia turned to him, her eyes locking onto his, and for a moment, everything else faded away. There was no hesitation in her movements now. She sprinted toward the exit, her pace quickening as she reached the door. Vincent's team followed, and in the chaos of their escape, the Giordano family was left behind in the dust. But Vincent knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They had made it out, but the war was still raging. As they piled into the car, Vincent's mind was already planning their next move. The battle for the city wasn't over yet, and he wasn't going to rest until he had reclaimed what was rightfully his. We're not done, Vincent muttered, his eyes cold and focused on the road ahead. Not by a long shot. Mia sat next to him, her face still set in that determined look. I know, but we've got this, Vincent. We've been through worse. And we're going to make it through this, too. Vincent glanced at her, surprised by the conviction in her voice. She was right. They had made it through the worst. And if they were going to take down the Giordano family once and for all, they would have to stay strong, stay united. He couldn't afford to let the pressure break them. Let's finish this, Vincent said, his voice a promise. Mia nodded, and for the first time in a long while, Vincent allowed himself to believe that they might just win this fight. But he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The Giordano family had underestimated him. And now, he was going to show them exactly what he was capable of. The car sped through the city streets, the headlights cutting through the darkness like a blade. Vincent sat in the driver's seat, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. The engine hummed beneath him, but inside, his thoughts were a storm. The fight with the Giordano family was far from over, and the weight of what he had to do next pressed down on him. Mia sat beside him, her eyes scanning the darkened streets. You good? Vincent asked, his voice low, breaking the silence. Mia nodded, her face set with determination. Yeah, but we need to keep moving. Vincent glanced at her, his expression hard. He had always trusted her, but this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The Giordano family was relentless, and now, after everything that had happened, they were pushing back with everything they had. We can't afford to waste time, Vincent said, pushing the car faster. The moment we stop, they'll close in on us. We need to make our move before they do. Mia's gaze didn't leave the road ahead. Where do we start? She asked, her voice steady. Vincent's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. We've got a contact on the inside. He's been working for the Giordano family for years, but he's loyal to me. If anyone can get us the information we need, it's him. He paused, his thoughts racing. We meet him at the docks. The docks. A place that had been the setting of too many bloody confrontations, too many deals gone wrong. Vincent knew it was dangerous, but there was no other choice. The information they needed was critical, and time was running out. They had to move. As the car turned down a narrow alley, the towering silhouette of the docks emerged from the mist. The area was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos that had defined Vincent's world for years. He parked the car in a shadowed corner, the engine shutting off with a soft click. Stay alert, Vincent murmured, his voice almost a whisper. Mia didn't respond. She didn't need to. They both knew the stakes. Vincent stepped out of the car first, his boots hitting the pavement with a quiet thud. He moved quickly, his eyes scanning every corner of the dock. The salty air mixed with the scent of oil and rust, the smell of the city's underbelly. As they approached the meeting spot, Vincent's mind ran through the plan. The contact they were meeting, Tony, was a man he had known for years. But even Vincent couldn't predict what Tony might do under pressure. He had to be ready for anything. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, and Vincent's hand instinctively went to the gun at his hip. Mia was by his side, alert and ready. They reached the edge of the dock, where Tony stood, his figure half hidden in the shadows. You're late. Tony's voice was rough, his eyes flicking to Mia before returning to Vincent. I don't have much time. Vincent didn't waste time with pleasantries. We need intel. Now. Tony glanced around nervously, his eyes darting back to the dark corners of the dock. It's not just the Giordano family, he said in a low voice. There's someone higher up. Someone pulling the strings behind them. And they're planning something big. Vincent's pulse quickened. Who? Tony shook his head. I don't know yet. But they've got a mole inside your organization, Vincent. Someone's been feeding them everything. They know your moves before you make them. Vincent clenched his fists. A mole. The word rang in his ears like a death sentence. He had trusted his men, but now that trust was in question. What else? Vincent demanded. Tony hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he took in the seriousness of Vincent's tone. They've been setting up a new operation, Vincent. Something big. The Giordano family is just the muscle. Whoever's behind them has the resources to wipe you out. They're moving everything. Money, weapons, people. They've got connections everywhere. Vincent's mind raced as he processed the information. The Volkovs had been just the beginning. This was bigger than he could have imagined. Where are they meeting? Vincent asked, his voice calm but deadly. Tony looked around once more, making sure no one was listening. There's a warehouse on the edge of the city. You'll find them there, but be careful. It's a trap. They'll be expecting you. They won't be expecting us to make it out alive, Vincent muttered, his eyes cold. You get out of here. We'll handle it from here. Tony nodded, his face grim. Good luck. With that, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving Vincent and Mia standing in the dim light. The next move was clear, but the path was dangerous. They had to get to that warehouse, take out the remaining threats, and find out who was behind the Giordano family's rise to power. Vincent turned to Mia, his face hardening. We in this tonight. Mia didn't hesitate. We're in this together, Vincent. Let's finish it. As they made their way back to the car, Vincent's mind was already calculating their next move. The fight was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a real shot at winning. The war for the city wasn't just about power anymore. It was personal, and Vincent wasn't about to lose. The car started, its engine purring as Vincent pushed the gas pedal. They were headed to the warehouse, to the heart of the enemy's operation. This time, he wasn't waiting for them to make the first move. He was going to take the fight straight to their doorstep. The warehouse loomed ahead, its silhouette cutting through the night sky like a fortress built for war. Vincent's car came to a stop a few hundred yards away, the headlights briefly illuminating the cracked pavement before he killed the engine. He turned to Mia, his face set with determination. This is it. We take them out now. Mia didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, but there was something more behind her eyes, a fire that had only grown brighter with each challenge they faced together. I'm ready, she said, her voice calm and resolute. Vincent nodded, pushing open the car door. The sound of their footsteps echoed as they moved toward the warehouse, the night air thick with tension. His thoughts raced. calculating their every move. There was no turning back now. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, not even for a second. As they approached the warehouse, Vincent signaled for his men to spread out and take their positions. Mia was with him, her hand resting on the gun at her side, ready to act at a moment's notice. Inside the warehouse, Vincent could hear voices faintly, the sound of movement, of people preparing for something. They were getting close. His mind raced with possibilities. The Giordano family's operation was massive, and they had grown more ruthless with each passing day. They couldn't afford to underestimate them. Vincent's team moved like shadows, quietly entering the warehouse through the back entrance, guns raised, ready for whatever awaited them. As they moved deeper into the warehouse, Vincent's ears picked up the unmistakable sound of footsteps ahead. "Stay sharp," he whispered to his team. They continued forward, their bodies low to the ground, blending with the darkness around them. Then, suddenly, a door slammed open, and a dozen men in dark clothing stepped out, weapons drawn. "We've got company," Vincent muttered, signaling for his team to open fire. The warehouse erupted into chaos as gunshots filled the air. Vincent was already moving, ducking behind a stack of crates, his gun raised, taking out one enemy after another with cold precision. Mia was beside him, equally deadly, her shots precise, her movements fluid as she covered their flank. But Vincent knew they couldn't stay here long. The Giordano family wasn't just going to sit back and take this. They would retaliate with everything they had. "Luca, take the left side," Vincent shouted over the gunfire. "We need to split them up." His team responded immediately, moving to flank the remaining Giordano soldiers. But as they advanced, the sound of more doors opening echoed from the far side of the warehouse. Vincent's pulse quickened. They had to move fast. He motioned for Mia to follow him as they pushed toward the center of the warehouse. "Keep going," Vincent said, his voice tight. "We're almost there." Mia didn't question him. She followed him, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings, anticipating the next threat. But as they neared the center, the ground beneath them seemed to shake. The unmistakable sound of an explosion rocked the building. Vincent's ears rang, but he kept moving, urging his men forward. The blast had knocked out the lights, and the warehouse was plunged into darkness. Vincent cursed under his breath. This wasn't part of the plan. But in this business, nothing ever went as planned. He reached for his flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness, illuminating the chaos that had unfolded in front of them. His men were still fighting, but the explosion had given the Giordano family the upper hand. Vincent could feel the pressure mounting. They had to finish this. "Stay with me," Vincent ordered, pushing forward. Mia was close behind, her voice steady as she spoke into the earpiece. "We need to get to the control room. It's the only way we can shut down their operation." Vincent nodded, his mind already working through their options. The control room was on the second floor, and they had to get there fast before the Giordano family could regroup. He could hear their voices getting louder, but he wasn't about to let them corner him again. "Luca, secure the entrance," Vincent called. "Mia, you're with me." The two of them made their way toward the stairs, the sound of footsteps following closely behind them. The closer they got to the control room, the more they realized just how heavily fortified the Giordano family had made this place. But Vincent wasn't backing down now. They were so close, he could almost taste victory. He reached the door to the control room, his hand on the handle, when the unmistakable sound of footsteps reached his ears. He turned just in time to see a group of Giordano soldiers round the corner. "Get inside," Vincent barked at Mia, shoving her through the door as he fired back at the approaching soldiers. The door slammed shut behind them, and Vincent pressed his back against the wall, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Mia was already at the control panel, her fingers flying across the buttons as she accessed the system. "We've got about 3 minutes before they breach this door," Mia said, her voice calm but urgent. Vincent nodded, his eyes scanning the room. He didn't have much time. He had to buy them the chance to shut down the Giordano family's operations for good. As the sound of gunfire and explosions grew louder outside the room, Vincent took a deep breath. "Do it," he said. Mia's fingers danced across the panel as she worked, her face a picture of concentration. Vincent kept his eyes trained on the door, waiting for the inevitable. He didn't know what was going to happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. This was the moment that would change everything. The Giordano family had underestimated him, and now they were about to pay the price. The control room hummed with the sound of computers processing data, but Vincent couldn't focus on that. His mind was fixed on the door, his ears straining for the sound of footsteps or any hint of movement. Mia was at the panel, her fingers working quickly, but even she could feel the weight of the moment. The tension was palpable. Vincent's pulse thrummed in his ears as he took his position, watching the door like a hawk. The Giordano family had made their move, and now it was time to finish what they had started. Mia's voice cut through the silence, calm but urgent. Almost done. Just a few more seconds. Vincent nodded, trying to remain composed. He knew that the longer they stayed here, the more likely it was that the Giordano family would breach the room. But they had come this far. They had taken down the Volkovs. They couldn't let the Giordano family slip through their fingers. The countdown in his mind ticked down, the seconds stretching like hours. He could feel the walls closing in. Mia's fingers paused for a moment as the door rattled, signaling the first wave of Giordano soldiers outside. "We've got company," she muttered, not looking away from the screen. Vincent didn't flinch. "Keep going," he said, his voice steady. "I'll hold them off." The door shook again, louder this time. Vincent's hand instinctively went to his weapon, but he kept his focus on the task at hand. He couldn't afford to waste any time. "How much longer?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Just a few more seconds," Mia said, not missing a beat. Vincent's mind raced. If they didn't finish what they started, the Giordano family would regroup, and everything they had fought for would crumble. The door splintered as the first shot hit it. Vincent's heart skipped a beat, but his training took over. He fired back, the sound of gunshots filling the room. The Giordano family wasn't going to make this easy. But Vincent wasn't about to let them win. Mia was still working, but the pressure was mounting. Vincent's shots were coming fast, and he wasn't letting up. His men had to be getting closer, but the seconds felt like hours. Mia was almost there. He could feel it. The door shook again, the crack widening. Vincent's team was closing in, but the Giordano family was fighting back with everything they had. Just when it seemed like the door was about to give way, Mia's voice broke through the chaos. "Got it," she said, a breath of relief escaping her lips. "It's done." Vincent didn't wait for her to say more. He moved, his team right behind him. They pushed forward, the door now a gaping hole, as the Giordano soldiers fell back. The tide had turned. Vincent moved with the speed of a man who knew what was at stake, his men securing the control room, making sure no one else could slip through. Mia followed closely behind, her expression focused but relieved. They had done it. The Giordano family's operation was finished. Vincent moved to the central control panel, looking at the blinking lights. The system was shut down. It was over. At least for now. He turned to Mia, who was watching him with a mix of respect and exhaustion. "You did good," he said, his voice low but sincere. Mia gave him a small nod, her usual confidence returning. "We both did," she said. "But this isn't over. They'll regroup. They won't go down without a fight." Vincent turned to the door, his mind already shifting to what came next. "No," he said, his voice calm. "This time, we take it all. The Giordano family won't get back up. Not after this." He knew the war wasn't over, not yet. There would always be enemies to face, battles to fight, but for the first time in a long while, Vincent felt in control. The city, his empire, everything he had fought for, it was still his. But he had learned something in this fight. Power wasn't just about controlling others. It was about who you trusted, who stood beside you when everything was on the line. And Mia had proven herself time and time again. She was no longer just an ally. She was a partner. Vincent's gaze shifted to the horizon, the streets of the city stretching out in front of him. It had taken everything to get here. The blood, the sweat, the sacrifices. But he had won. And in this world, winning was everything. "We move on tomorrow," Vincent said, his voice firm. "We finish this once and for all." Mia looked at him, her eyes burning with determination. "Together," she said, her voice resolute. Vincent met her gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. The Giordano family had underestimated them. And now, they would pay the price. The city would stay under his control. Vincent Romano would not be beaten. He would be victorious, no matter what. The battle for the city had been won, but the war? The war was just beginning. In this thrilling journey of power, betrayal, and survival, the world of organized crime collides with unexpected alliances and fierce loyalty. The story follows Vincent Romano, a powerful mafia boss who must navigate the deadly waters of the underworld while forging an unanticipated bond with Mia, a woman whose strength and resolve turn the tides of their fates. As the stakes rise, their shared experiences become more than just survival. They transform into something deeper. The tension between them builds with every move, resembling the most intense romance stories where trust and passion intertwine, proving that even in a world defined by violence, there's room for the human heart to thrive. As their enemies close in, Vincent and Mia face the ultimate test of loyalty and love, showing that the most profound romance stories can bloom from the most dangerous circumstances. This journey is a testament to resilience, where every decision brings them closer to each other, even as they fight to keep everything they've worked for intact. The narrative weaves through action-packed sequences and emotional moments, unfolding a story that mirrors the thrilling suspense of romance stories, where characters find unexpected strength in each other. As the battle intensifies, Vincent and Mia must confront the dark truth of their world while also learning to embrace the sparks of connection that grow between them, giving new meaning to the romance stories that captivate audiences. Don't miss out on this electrifying tale of survival, power, and love that will keep you hooked from start to finish.